I often talk about my garden early on and doing all the things and all the things I gathered, but I recently came across some pictures that I had taken early on in the setup process. So I started setting everything up in late December of 2023. We don't have leaves in our particular yard, so I had to go around collecting leaves. Here's me starting my seedlings and getting all the raised beds set up. It was a pretty huge process for someone who'd never gardened before. I was putting things in all the wrong time. I was starting broccoli when I shouldn't have been starting broccoli. I was putting things in places and spaces that I had no idea if it would work. But what it did teach me was when to plant things and when not to plant things, how to space things. Here's my original 5 garden raised beds that I started out with. And I just started out with 5, but I got hooked. I just couldn't stop. So I started adding grow bags, and then I thought, well, I could add some additional raised bed gardens as well. So I know many of you see the garden as it is now, really full and really packed, but this is kind of just the humble beginnings of me getting started and planting all the things. And it was a really exciting time, just seeing broccoli grow and, see everything that I had planted kind of starting out. So I wanted to share this because I'd never really been able to show you all of the setup. Here's me adding another raised bed, some of the harvest, and just seeing how things grow. So here's me getting a first broccoli crown, and I was so excited by it because I'd never seen food grow before. So yeah, my onions. I didn't know it took so long to grow onions, so I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and I wanted to turn this bed over. And so I decided after weeks and weeks and weeks of those onions being in there to pull them out. But that was a decision because, again, I didn't know, hey, I should be starting onions way early. But what I learned, even though, hey, my broccoli was about to bolt and it was probably too late, I did harvest a couple of crowns of broccoli, believe it or not. It was wonderful to have that process and to see. But again, I'm always talking about, hey, I had zucchini before. I had a ton of zucchini and different things I planted. So I had planted garlic, I had planted onions, but again, I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't really know even really about plant spacing. So again, I just thought this would be encouraging to someone else starting out, just to see the setup, just to see how I kind of decided to go along, go about doing things, and hey, I'm gonna add this, I'm gonna move this, and so it's a growth in process, and I'm so excited for all the things that I now have. Sometimes I feel it's so small, and then I look back and I'm like, but you just had 5 beds. Oh, I was so excited when I got my first zucchini. I was so excited. I was like, these leaves are so big. But yeah, being able to grow zucchini, harvest zucchini, understanding like the male flower versus the female flower, pruning, and hey, some of them did become diseased. I had powdery mildew. There was a lot I learned, but it was a good learning. Here's harvest, which I was most excited about. I had tomatoes and basil, and also I had other flowers growing in the garden around the house. So I figured I'd throw those in here because I was taking care of other things outside of just my garden. I have hydrangeas. I have some, I don't even know what all these flowers are, but I had carrots, but these had tall shoots, but nothing came out. The tomatoes were growing really well. The zucchinis were coming along. I had tons and tons and tons of zucchinis, which was so exciting. So yeah, it was a great time, and I'm so glad for all of the learnings, figuring out what things look like, figuring out like what is this. I didn't label anything. I really didn't know what was going on. There's the hydrangeas, but I got lots of zucchini, and more zucchini, and more zucchini. So it was a great time, and I'm so excited that I had this opportunity. Arugula, and I had lettuce. Apparently, I had things growing in the garden, had no idea what they were, and And again, I grew lettuce all at the wrong time. So some of the lettuce and the arugula tasted extremely bitter. Finally got a huge harvest of more zucchini. This was a butternut squash. I thought it was a watermelon. And yeah, it stopped growing. I didn't know what it was. And so I thought it was a watermelon. I cut it off when it stopped growing and opened it up. I'm like, this isn't a watermelon. Again, when you don't know what you don't know. Potato harvest. My potato harvest was so awesome. And digging for potatoes is probably like one of the best things I ever did in my life. That tomato plant that I have out there now, still giving. I love it. So yeah, my garden I think has come a long way. I've added, I've weeded, I've turned things around, I've moved things around, I've plotted out like, hey, I could grow something here, I could grow something here. So yeah, it this was, I would say, a living, breathing project. I am so glad that you all are coming along with me as I learn, as I figure out things. This is my second attempt at growing things. So these are my new garden beds that I added. But as I added and I harvested and I grew more, I was able to see like, hey, I'm hooked. I wanted that greenhouse. So, I recently did a greenhouse video, but I have been learning so much in just these last several months, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I think this has been an amazing journey, figuring things out, figuring out what to do, figuring out what works and what doesn't work. I hope you get to spend some time in your garden today.